Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we're talking about investing and the economy. As mentioned, how well companies perform can be tied to the economy. So, Carrie, there are concerns now over something called wageflation. What is it, and should it be a concern?
Well, it's interesting because, we're talking about inflation and inflation subsiding and supply chains opening up, and demand has been softening. We do see that. However, we do have a high level of wage inflation, and it is what the name says, right? Like, I need to pay my people more, and I'm not able to raise my price at the same level. So your differential is that your profits are going down. And so we have been seeing a lot of pressure in the labor market for an increase in wages. Now, the calculation for this is a little more complex than just what earnings growth is as we get that number out every month. It really relates to the wages per unit of sales. So the way that the formula works is that it takes into consideration this thing called productivity. And we had, so the inflation itself is a combination of a higher amount of actual pay and compensation and a lower level of productivity. So if you remember when the world shut down and everyone started to work from home, we actually saw productivity, that economic data point, skyrocket. Why? Because we were locked in our homes. So this whole idea of work from home really took off. Like, wow, we can do our jobs from home. And it was wonderful during COVID when everything was closed. But then the world started to open and everyone kept working from home. So, as I take a walk in the middle of the day down my street, I see people out with their kids and with their dogs and they're working. And now what we're seeing is that productivity has fallen off a cliff over the course of the last year. So, this relates back now to this debate of how do you get people back into the office? And the employee side of it is, I want to work from home. The employer side of it is, I need you back in the office. And what we are now seeing is that the work from home actually isn't working so well because productivity has been really starting at the beginning of last year. We have literally seen it fall off a cliff, and there's just going to be more wage pressure because now companies are wanting people to come back into the office, and believe it or not, some employees are demanding things like, well, I'm not coming back to the office unless you pay for my parking or pay my mileage or reimburse my meals. So it's going to, I think, continue to put pressure on the wage expense line, thereby eating into corporate profitability. That's my 2 cents.
All right.
What I'm seeing to add to that is that corporations, as this tight labor market begins to loosen, which there's signs that it might be loosening, maybe. What corporations will be able to do once they have some flexibility in that regard is they'll be able to offer the people who are willing to come into the office more money, and those who insist on staying home will just be paid less. And if they can afford to be paid less, they'll stay home because they are less productive and they will not be worth as much, generally speaking. Not every case. I mean, there are functions that probably are performed better in solitude than others, and that'll sort out. And that's the whole capitalist system. This stuff will all work through the system as the economy ebbs and flows, and corporations are very good at running themselves, and they'll figure out how to get through it, and that will cause inflation to maybe not be a problem. Biggest problem I see with inflation today is the productivity issue. Lower productivity means higher prices. It's just that simple.
Yeah, what I don't like about the wageflation debate is inflation is generally a vicious cycle, right? Wage inflation goes up, or if wages go up, that means prices go up, and which means wage inflation needs to go up, which means prices need to go up, and it operates in a cycle like that. So as the unemployment rate kind of ticks up and as the Fed hikes rates more, I think you'll start to see wage inflation come down. But make no mistake, employees or consumers that have their pocketbooks go up is a great thing. But the other thing you don't really talk about that much is there's something like 65 million Americans who are retired, who are not benefiting from wage inflation. So it really, I think, is imperative that the Fed get this inflation kind of problem a little bit more under control so we can get back to more of a normalized 2% inflation rate more consistently.
Kim, you want to wrap it up for us?
I do. I'm very hopeful about how technology can help us solve the conundrum. Gosh, I love using words like that. The conundrum of wageflation. And why is that? Well, companies are going to have to look at what your function is, see if it can be replaced, God forbid, or augmented, which is most of what technology does, augmented an employee's productivity, and then invest in that. And I think with things like, now I'm not saying this is actually going to do it because there's a lot of flaws with it, but the AI kind of move, the machine learning, Chat GPT can help you do your job better, faster, stronger, and thus cheaper. So I think our ultimate way out of this is improvements in productivity and enhancing technology.
All right, good. Great comments. We'll be back in just a moment.